Anish Giri has just defeated Magnus Carlsen. This is from the final moments. Magnus realizes that there is nothing left to fight for. This is Anish's first win against Magnus in 12 years. The last time they played was, and Anish won was 12 years ago, and that was their first game against each other in classical chess. So this win takes Anish to world number 5 as well. It's a beautiful game. Anish started with d4. Magnus replied knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, b6, and g3. Now Magnus played bishop a6, forcing Anish to defend this pawn, either with e3, which would be inconvenient for Anish because he has already committed to g3, or with what Anish played, queen c2, defending with the queen, and the bishop goes back. Now bishop g2, c5, striking at the center, and d5. This is a very thematic pawn sacrifice. Pawn can take it, you will take back, and black can take back with the knight. So the compensation is that there is a backward pawn on d7, and after castling, the rook will have a nice file on the d file. So Magnus takes it, Anish takes back. So there has been 432 games at the top level in this position, and here knight takes back. Castles, bishop e7, Magnus is getting ready to castle, and rook d1. Knight c6, this is a very nice move. If you take the knight, then knight b4 comes. So you don't want to do that. So Anish plays queen f5. This must be all preparation. This is theory. Knight f6, saving the knight because it was attacked now. Pawn e4. And here Magnus has basically two good options. He can play g6, attacking the queen. This is the more preferred move. And he can play d6, which is what he chose. His idea is after e5, he can play queen d7. Slightly passive, but still very manageable for black. Maybe g6 was a better option. Now takes, and Magnus plays bishop f6. So Anish gets back the pawn, but Magnus is keeping this pawn as a weakness to attack and pick up later. It's not much of a strength because there is very few pieces. There's no queens. King being in the center is not a problem. But rook e1, it's still a little bit uncomfortable for black. Knight c3, and now knight b4. So this is still theory. It might not be preparation still, but they're still in theory. Knight e5. This is where theory ends. This was the first move with no games played at the top level from this position. So this was a nice opening surprise. Anish has unleashed a nice move here because if you take back on b7. And if you take on g2 first, then you lose. Knight takes knight, and we pick up one more piece, and then we take back. So knight takes e5, bishop takes b7. The position is perfectly equal right now. The d pawn is attacked, and rook d1 defending it. Knight c4, pawn d7, knight c2, and rook b1. So white is slightly better because of the d pawn, and black's rook is not active yet. There are some uncomfortable problems for black to solve. Material right now is equal, and here the pawn is hanging. Knight d4 was a slight mistake. Knight e5 would have been a better option for black. So this would be a little passive as well, but knight e5 was okay. Knight e5, if bishop f4, then just rook takes b7. And if bishop takes here, just rook takes b7. So this would have been a way for black to manage the position. And now soon he can unravel this setup and be fine. But Magnus went for knight d4. And now Anish played b4, attacking the pawn chain. And Magnus bites the butter. Rook takes d7. This was a mistake. He should have played, instead of rook takes bishop, he should have played a move like pawn h5 or knight e5, attacking the pawn. But he played rook takes pawn. But Anish played bishop d5, and Magnus is in trouble. Because now white's pieces will be active, the king is stuck, the knight's hanging. So Magnus moved the knight, but then takes, and bishop a3. White's pieces are too active. The rook is not in the game, and c5 is right now hanging. And you can't really defend it. If you play rook c7, then rook b8 check, and if knight e8, then just rook takes knight. If bishop takes back, just knight b5. And now because of the pin, the bishop would be falling. You move the rook, I take the... Actually, after rook d7, you can even play bishop c6, putting more pressure on the black position. And then we take on d4. So, position is already bad. After bishop a3, Magnus played king e7. getting out of the rook b8 threat and activating the rook. But now bishop takes pawn, threatening the knight. Here Magnus played knight e6, saving the knight, and Giri just retreated with the bishop. So this was Magnus's chance to actually go for a slightly worse position, but no longer losing. He could have played bishop takes and killed some of the play, and then get the rook in, or knight f5. Just rook c8. Knight f5 is even better. And now there will be some problems, but nothing unmanageable. Just king f6, and he's fine. If bishop c3, just king e7. This is okay. And if you play something like rook d3, just pawn h5 or rook c8, and he is fine. Okay, better for white, but still holdable. But instead, he went a5. And this is a pawn sacrifice just to relieve some of the pressure. After bishop takes a5, rook c8, activating the rook, the knight goes to a4, threatening knight b6. So Magnus played knight c4. Here, a lot of things are loose. The pieces are a little bit loose, right? Everything is like undefended. The rook also. And here, Anish played rook c1, pinning the knight, bishop e5. If you take the knight, then rook takes rook would come. So it doesn't get us anything because they will take back. So here Anish played bishop b4 check. The king went to f6 because e8 there will be some problems of pins. So he went to f6 and now Anish played a killer move which does not give any chance for black to defend. Just knight c5. Threatening bishop takes c4. Here Magnus took and now rook takes c4. The pin is deadly. So the activity of the white pieces stayed forever, and he could not get out of this pin. And Magnus again could not fight properly. The only chance here is something like knight a6, hoping that rook takes, knight takes, bishop f3, and then takes, and takes. This is the only sort of hope for Magnus here to hold the game. But instead, after rook takes c4, Magnus just played rook c7, and here it's a forced win for Anish. And Anish playing like a robot, like a killer robot, he plays bishop a5. The problem is wherever the rook moves, bishop b6 is coming, which loses the piece, and this is where Carlsen resigned. So where did Magnus actually go wrong in this game? d6 was already a slight inaccuracy. It allowed e5 and it made the position a bit passive. And then Magnus allowed this pawn to stay, but he's going to pick it up. So this was a moment for Magnus to play knight e5 to deal with that pass pawn. But instead, Magnus did not realize the danger and he played knight d4. And this got Anish the chance to play b4. But the main blunder was that he took the pawn. He took on d7 at the wrong time. He should have played knight e5. Because he took the pawn, white's pieces became too active. And the king never got out because it's all tempo. The knight's hanging. He saved the knight, takes, and bishop a3. C pawn is hanging. And by the time black realizes all this, the pawn is already gone and threats are incoming. So from here, Anish played perfectly and converted this really well.